Hey everyone, Meagle Reviews here. I literally just made a 30-minute video talking about the harassment and bullying that Karla and Jesse are facing on Survivor 43, and I did want to add two things to it that I forgot to add. So, Gabler almost had a perfect game, voting-wise. Like, he received every single vote on the jury with the exception of James, who voted for Cassidy. Now, a lot of people are saying, oh, Karla and Jesse are just so bitter. They're so bitter. That's ridiculous. Literally, why are they being singled out when everybody but James voted for Gabler? They're not saying anything about Noelle or Janine or Cody. So why are they being singled out over the rest of the jury? I literally do not see anybody else on that jury getting any hate but Karla and Jesse. The other point I want to make, there's been talk since Survivor 35 about the final for fire making challenge, and I do get it, and I did think about this, and I do think something needs to be tweaked about it. And here's my thought process on Final Four. Originally, people thought that they implemented that in the game so fan favorites would be able to win or have a chance of winning. And for those people who don't know, the Final Four fire making concept goes like this. So you have one person that wins Final Four immunity. So they get to take one person with them, no questions asked. The other two that are remaining have to compete in a fire-making challenge for the final spot. The argument against that is that the game doesn't revolve around strategy at that point. It basically revolves on the fire-making challenge. And I have seen that. Like, I saw, as horrible as the season as Island of the Idols was, and as a stance about that season, I stopped watching it after a certain point and refused to do any recaps until the following season. But from what I have saw and heard, the main reason they voted Janet out was because she was an expert in making fire and nobody wanted to go against her in fire. Now, had the fire making challenge not been a factor, would Janet still have went home? Possibly, because she was very likable, but I do think she probably would have had another tribal council or two. She could have possibly won. I look at the Final Four fire making as this. I do agree with what people are saying to a degree, because at that point, it really doesn't matter what your game is, because your whole game is going to be based around that fire making challenge. Who do you go up against? Who do you put there in fire if you win? It's almost like this class I took the first year I was in college. It was this math class that had this exit exam. So basically, theoretically, you could have a 92 in the class before you take this exam. But if you fail that exam, you fail the whole class. So it's like sometimes, when you have a high A and you fail the final, or some people even fail the final on purpose because they know they still get an A. I'm not that type of person, but you would still pass the class. Whereas, like, I believe I had like a 90 in my math class, which is saying something because I'm terrible at math, before this exam. But because I didn't pass this exit exam, I failed the class and had to repeat it. And that was the first time ever that had happened to me. So basically, what I thought was, like, it doesn't really matter what my grade is before I take that class, that test, sorry. Because if I don't pass that test, I don't pass the class. So what does the rest of the class matter if it all comes down to that class? And there's so much pressure, because if you fail so many classes, then it eventually will affect your financial aid, So I do think of it like that. I do see similarities there, because basically it doesn't matter what your game is. Like, you can win the most immunities, you could play the best social game, but if you don't win at that fire making challenge, then your game's done. So a lot of people think it's not fair because, like, the whole game then is just, the whole, like, basically post-merge is based around that fire. Like, who would you want to sit next to, but then also, too, who do you put at the fire making challenge? So it makes it more complicated of a game, so I could see maybe why they implemented that in the game, but it does make it unfair to a degree because your whole game is basically shot, because you're basically just sitting around waiting for that fire making challenge. And yeah, I know a lot of people aren't happy about that, and a lot of fan favorites have been axed because of the fire making challenge, and that's probably what makes why some winners look more unfavorable to other winners. The other part of that is that some people think that you have to give up your immunity for the fire. Like we saw on the edge of extinction, Chris Underwood gave up his immunity necklace and gave it to Julie so he could go against Devins and fire. And for Chris's game, that was the best move he can make, because that was the first season they ever had Edge of Extinction. I mean, that's what the whole season was called. And people perceived like, hey, he wasn't in the game, he didn't really make moves, so this was the only big move that Chris could make at the time, and I believe that gave him the win. But then you have other seasons down the road where, like in Winners at War, Boston Rob pointed out at the Final Tribal Council that you wanted to take Tony out, and you had the possibility to right there, but you didn't do it. And that's why he didn't vote for Natalie in the final Tribal Council. And that's what people are saying. I believe Noelle pointed it out at the Final Tribal Council to Cassidy. Why didn't you give up your immunity to go against Jesse in the fire making challenge? I mean, I see both sides to that, because on one hand, that might be a big enough move for you to win the game. And for some jury members that are unsure, that might be the deciding factor of if they win the game or not. However, I'm a firm believer in sure things. And when you have that immunity necklace around your neck, you're for sure safe. You don't want it to be a situation in Micronesia with Eric, how he gave up his immunity necklace and they all voted him out. I mean, you run that risk. But now people are expecting you to give up immunity to go against that person in fire. But it's like, why would they give up immunity? They have immunity to go. Why would they base a sure thing off a 50-50 shot of staying in it? Because if they win, they have a great move, but then if they lose, they look like an idiot in front of everybody. So there is something to the fire making challenge. I do think it's here to stay. I think if anything, maybe it needs to be changed a bit. I honestly don't know how they would do it. Maybe the fans have some ideas, but I definitely think it needs to be changed, or some of the rules have to be changed. Like, one thing that would make it a little bit more fair game is that, let's just say you win immunity, you're safe, you take that spot, but then all the other 3 people should have to make fire, because that would make it very fair, because you're out there for 39, now 26 days, you should know how to make fire, and if you don't, well, then that's on you. I mean, nobody can say, oh, well, you didn't take this person, I'm not going to vote for you, or you took this person, yada yada, or you didn't give up immunity. That way, you have immunity, you're for sure safe, the other 3 have to make fire. So I believe that would make it more fair and even then. Comment down below what you guys think about Final Four, and I'm now done with my Jesse and Karla video. I will make a video about the final episode of 43 this week. Till next time, stay regal.